Hi, I'm Natalie Hunter, author and weeb, here to talk about reverse harem for a change. This season's new isekai series, My Next Life as a Villainess, All Routes Lead to Doom, has certainly been an interesting take on the tried and true transported to another world genre. It does seem that there is something of a trend in light novels and manga for this style of isekai, and this series is possibly going to be the start of a new wave in anime adaptations, so we could well be seeing a lot more shows featuring female protagonists and reverse harem setups in isekai anime in the coming seasons. Now, as an author, I have quite a lot of experience in writing harem and isekai type stories, albeit for a mature audience, but I know virtually nothing about otome games, and I've only actually written one novel with a reverse harem premise, so I was going into this show without a lot of background and no real expectations in terms of the tropes that would be in play or how the story might pan out, outside of what I know about writing romance in general. I haven't read the source material, and I have to say I was expecting it to end up being a lot heavier on the avoiding the death flags aspect than on the reverse harem romance. But I've actually become pretty hooked on this series, mainly because the characters are so entertaining, and I really at this point just want to see who is going to end up being the best boy or girl in the eyes of the heroine Bakarina. But it's impossible for me not to try and figure out what the writer is going to do with the characters they've set up, so I can't help but want to analyse what we've seen so far of each of the potential partners for Katarina, and to try and work out who the signs are pointing to as her endgame partner. I did see some video by Mother's Basement where he posited that the whole thing could end up in some kind of 8-way polygamy situation, but then he has a lot of strange ideas, and to be honest, even as a harem author, I really don't think that's the way this story's going to go, but I'll tell you why that is later. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the 7 characters and how likely I think they are to win over Katarina in the end. I'm going to talk about the characters in ascending order of how I rank them as possible winners, so by the fact that Sophia ASCART's first, you can take it that I also think she has the lowest chances. But I do also think that Sophia is worth talking about first, as she stands apart from the others in a few important ways. First of all, she's the only character interested in Katarina who is also clearly happy for a different character to be the winner in the end. She has tried to set Katarina up with her brother, as well as showing her own desire for her, and that indicates that it would be a win for Sophia whether it is she herself or Nicol who wins in the end. But perhaps the most interesting thing about Sophia is that it seems that she is, like Katarina, someone who's been isekai'd from Japan. I'm really not sure how that works. Truck-kun must have been incredibly busy in the area they live in, or perhaps a long time has passed in between Katarina's death in the real world and the time when she's actually reincarnated as Katarina in the fortune lover world, giving time for Sophia's past self to live out her own life and die too. But I think that's probably not all that important to the story. What is important though is that we can already see that Katarina has a strong friendship with Sophia in her previous life, but there's no indication that there was anything romantic between them. I personally don't think that this series is going to have a Yuri ending anyway, but if it does, I think Sophia is one of the lowest on the list of potential winners. But we'll be happy with the ending I think she'll get, which will simply be remaining as one of Katarina's best friends. Next up we have Keith, who is Katarina's adopted brother. I really think his chances are quite low as well, mainly because he's been shown to be overly possessive of Katarina, and not in a way I think suggests the author wants us to strongly ship him with her. Also, I think we have to take into account Katarina's general dumbness. It would take a lot for her to realise that he's interested in her. She's already a highly oblivious harem protagonist, and the brother she grew up with will probably be one of the last people she'll realise is interested in her romantically, rather than caring for her in a more appropriate way. Mary Hunt is another character who I think has pretty low chances of ending up with Katarina. I think the way that she's begun to show some slight yandere tendencies make me feel like she's a character who's been included more for the comedy potential she offers than for the romantic endgame plot of the story. But that doesn't mean I think she's going to be relegated to comic relief. I think it's possible that she's going to serve as a villainess in her own right if ALLAN, who she's supposed to be engaged to, is actually going to be the character that Katarina decides she's interested in. Not in the conventional way, of course. She will not be trying to do anything to harm Katarina, but she will definitely want to hinder ALLAN's chances of getting closer to her. She's already doing stuff like this while ALLAN remains unaware of his own feelings for Katarina, and I think she'll really start to play a more scheming part in the story should ALLAN or Katarina begin to make it obvious that they like each other. Remember that Mary, like Katarina, was a villainess in the original Fortune Lover game. So, with those being the three that I don't think are strongly in the running, now we get into the characters I think stand a reasonable chance of being the endgame pairing for Katarina. The lowest of those, I think, is probably Nicol, because he's been shown as something of a dark horse in the show, and again, I think he's also been included more for comedy purposes and to add some interesting dynamics around Sophia, rather than as a front and centre character that we're supposed to root for. The reason why he ranks higher than characters like Mary and Keith is that he's the only character that Katarina herself has shown any physical attraction to, aside from possibly Sophia, who I think she more admires the beauty of than actually finds attractive as a potential partner. Katarina's been shown to be as easily moved by Nicol's appearance as other characters, and the fact that he's been shown as a parallel to the romantic hero from the romance novels that Sophia and Katarina like to read kind of suggest he'd be one of the easiest characters for Katarina to make the jump from thinking of as a friend into someone she's into. However, he is also the only other character who probably does still have feelings for his original love interest from the Fortune Lover game, in the form of his Imoto, Sophia. Romance stories are usually written in a way that means the heroine shares the hero's affections with no one, and I can't see Sophia and Nicol's relationship degrading in this story to allow for Katarina to be the only one he wants. I will be somewhat surprised if he's the winner in the end, but not as surprised as if it's one of the three I mentioned before. Third from the top then is Maria Campbell. I think that Katarina will end up with a man rather than a woman in the end, mainly because there's been nothing to suggest that she's romantically interested in women. For example, when Mary suggested during their ladies-only party that her ideal partner might not be a man, Katarina was shown to have not really considered this as an option. However, if the author has decided to go for a Yuri ending, then I really think that Maria has the strongest chance of being Katarina's best girl. She was, after all, the heroine in the original Fortune Lover game that Katarina has found herself living in, and she's also someone who is shown to be very compatible with Katarina. She's the one who can cook the sweets that Katarina seems far more interested in than anything else, and also her humble background would make Katarina feel more at home, given that she really loves farming and she doesn't seem all that interested in the lifestyles of the princes. I think it's more likely that Maria will end up being one of Katarina's friends at the end, and I don't see her taking it badly when Katarina chooses someone else, but the chance of her winning is certainly still there. Prince Geordo, or Gerald, seems to depend which translations you've got as to what you call him, is a character I actually feel quite sorry for. He really should be the winner by default, being Katarina's fiancé, but everyone around him is basically trying to undermine his position and steal her from him. Now, an ending where Katarina falls for him would be a particularly happy one for a character of his type. A prince being in love with the person he's arranged to marry is rare in these kinds of settings, and is about everything he could hope for. Also, Geordo being Katarina's endgame husbando would echo what's presumably the most commonly explored route in the Fortune Lover game. I think his chances of winning are pretty high from a tropey perspective then, but there's another thing working in his favour. He's also the only character who's been forward enough with Katarina so far that he might break through her obliviousness. The only thing I think might be counting against him story-wise are that Katarina choosing him is the path that creates the least friction. Their families want them to marry, and it's what all the other characters would be expecting to happen anyway if they can't win her for themselves. So there's not the potential for drama there that there is with her falling for a female commoner like Maria, or someone promised to someone else like ALLAN. So that brings us to the character I think actually is most likely to emerge as this story's winner, Prince ALLAN. I definitely didn't think this at first, but actually at this point in the story he's been given the most romance hero type development. He's the only one who doesn't really seem to realise how he feels about her, allowing the realisation of this to come later in his character arc and more in tandem with what will presumably happen for Katarina herself. He's also the only one who started out seeing Katarina as a rival, making way for the enemies to lovers type romance trope that romance fans tend to like. He's not knowingly playing the game at all, and yet he's still managed to have a better romantic moment with Katarina than anybody else up that tree. And to me, it really feels like he's being set up as both a popular choice with viewers and a satisfying endgame winner as the story progresses. So that's my ranking of the 7 main characters and where I think they fit in terms of the probability of them ending up with Katarina in the end. But with a cast this big in a romantic comedy, there are of course some wildcard endings to consider. Firstly, there's the 2 wildcard characters in the form of the student council president and Anne the maid. I don't think either of them are actual contenders, but I do think the author will have done more with the president than we've seen yet, given the tropiness of a student council president in general as a harem character. I think he'll become more involved in the story later, and may even be a red herring who Katarina herself might seem interested in, before deciding she has feelings for a more prominent cast member. I think the maid is there just for fun, and to show how the world with the isekai Katarina in it is so different from the original fortune lover world. The other wildcard endings would be Katarina choosing none of the characters, either intentionally, say deciding to be celibate or something, or unintentionally by dying. I think the latter could be interesting, making the dramatic irony of the story being that all routes really do lead to doom, no matter what she does. But I don't see this so far light and funny story actually taking a dark turn like that. If Katarina does meet one of the dooms from the game, I think it's more likely she'll be exiled, given we know she's prepared for that, and some or all of the others would probably go with her. There's also the polygamy ending, but I really don't think this is going to go that way. The story isn't about Katarina being torn between different characters, with a why choose ending being the best outcome for her, and other than Sophia, nobody at all seems willing to share her. Harem stories that go that way, rather than having an endgame winner, do usually set this up as something people are open to early on, and competition is then never a key dramatic device in that kind of story. It will usually be a story about the protagonist working towards some other kind of goals, where the harem support the main character. This story has none of the markings of heading in that sort of direction and having that kind of ending. But what do you think? I'm really interested to know what other people think is going to happen, or if I'm way off the mark in how I've taken the things that have been set up so far, so please let me know in the comments. This is a very new channel, so please like and subscribe because I do really need the love. You can also check out my own books on Amazon, including plenty of harem and isekai stories, as well as some romance, though be advised that they are a bit on the lewd side. Link to my full catalogue is in the description. Thanks as always for watching, and I hope to see you again for more anime content soon.